You're listening to the FM Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the FM Podcast, episode number 10, with me, your host, Brian Neff. So I'm going to level with you guys and say that since I started this podcast, I have felt somewhat conflicted in regards to content. And at times, I feel like I rip off the ideas of other people or that I regurgitate information that I may have heard in a podcast or video that was created by somebody else. And I do legitimately take the ideas of people who influence me, and I do present them here. However, I feel like I do a good job of adding my own commentary or my own tweaks to ensure that the content is genuinely my own. That being said, so I feel better, today we are going to go over the short list of people I feel that are consistently influential in my growth. And hopefully this will accomplish two things. First, I can essentially cite my sources and give those credit or those shout outs and the credit to those people who I feel deserve it. And, that way I won't feel so bad about being a plagiarist or something, Second, I've discovered all of these individuals on my own over the past 5 to 6 years. And I've been following them for that long, some of them even longer. And hopefully, this will provide you with an upfront list of solid people you can look into so that you can partake in the knowledge exchange as well. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with number one. So, person of influence number one is John Lovell. Who is John Lovell? John Lovell is an Army vet who spent his time in the 75th Ranger Regiment. He also served time as a missionary. He eventually began instructing at Tellura Group, where he started the popular YouTube channel Warrior Poet Society. And since then, the Warrior Poet Society concept has really blown up, and it's now its very own network where it hosts video content similar to Netflix. What drew me to John was the Warrior Poet concept, and that really resonated with me in my personal view. All too often, people in the tactical community get way too caught up in the shooting, tactics, gear, preparedness, etc. areas of life. And they completely disregard the thinking, philosophical aspects of life. And those aspects are just as, if not more important, as the tactical skills side of the house. The thinking, philosophy growth is the development of your mind and your soul, or more accurately, the heart. And the most refined tactical skills and tools will serve no purpose without the knowledge of when to use them and having the heart to pursue the right things when circumstances become difficult. And John's combination of tactical growth and mindset meld together perfectly with the mindset growth, right? Those two things complement each other, and he attacks both of them simultaneously. So where can you find John's content? John has a large presence on YouTube, where his videos cover a wide range of topics from shooting advice and gear reviews to philosophy and the warrior poet profiles on history's great warrior poets such as Leonidas, Miyamoto Musashi, and King David. If you enjoy that content, there is a premium subscription service that I mentioned, the Warrior Poet Society Network. The network provides instructional videos offered by today's top instructors in the tactical space, podcasts from people like Ryan Mickler, TV series like 100 Deadly Skills by Clint Emerson, which actually features one of my friends, Marcus Torgerson, as well as insider updates on what's going on with the Warrior Poet Society. So, moving on, person of influence number two, Mike Glover. Who is Mike Glover? Mike is another Army vet who spent his time as a Green Beret. From there, he contracted with the CIA. Mike is currently the owner of the training company Fieldcraft Survival and the founder of American Contingency, an online organization that's meant to connect and educate like-minded folks on current events and preparedness. what drew me to Mike? For starters, while I've only had an email correspondence with Mike, when you watch his videos, you can't help but notice he is down to earth and genuinely cares about helping people. There's no ego. There's no look at me, I'm Mike Glover kind of vibe. He seems to be a really solid and good person. Next, he has been preaching the overall message of self-reliance since he started his efforts with Fieldcraft Survival. And even before the shit show of 2020, Mike has been promoting this concept of preparedness and self-reliance. And just because you should, not because it's 2020, right? He's been saying, hopefully everything goes right, but you need to be prepared just in case you don't. And he's been preaching that before 2020. That's kind of been his niche. That's been his shit since he started Fieldcraft Survival. And for those of us, like myself, and hopefully you, if you're listening to this podcast, that have internalized that message and applied his content, you've probably been a lot more well-adjusted to 2020 than most other people. So I really have been grateful to Mike and the content he puts out in helping me be ready and helping me weather this, ninth circle of hell that is 2020. So anyway, finally, while Mike doesn't explicitly say it, or at least not that I've heard him say it, he promotes one of my favorite life and training principles, which is pieces of the pie. For those of unfamiliar with that concept, keep an eye out for a future podcast because I think I'm going to do one on that. But essentially what pieces of the pie means is in order to become, you need to become a whole pie. Individuals need to have multiple pieces of the pie, right? You can't just really focus on one piece of the pie. You can't focus on just being a good shooter, or you can't just focus on being good financially or being a good dad, whatever. Like, you need to be a well-rounded person. And if you look at it as a piece of the pie, right, you need to focus on each piece of the pie and give each one its due time and due effort so that way you can be a well-rounded. So Mike and Fieldcraft really promote this by offering all different subjects of courses, from shooting and combatives to overlanding and bugging out. So they've been on that whole well-rounded offering grind their whole time, and I think that's been really cool, and that's something that I personally really identify with. So where can you find Mike's content? Mike has a decent YouTube presence, although if you've been paying attention, he's getting shut down and monitored a lot on Instagram and YouTube. But he definitely has content on there. It's free. Definitely check it out. Lots of good info. Lots of good collaborations with other high-level people in the space. He also has a great podcast. I can't recommend it enough. It's the Fieldcraft Survival Podcast. It's obviously free. You can find it on Spotify, Apple. I listen to it on Spotify, but any main podcast carrying platform will probably have it. Just type in Fieldcraft Survival and it'll pop up. It's pretty popular. And if you enjoy all of that, he has premium content on locals.com for both Fieldcraft Survival as well as American Contingency. And even beyond that, if you want to get even closer to Mike and his crew, you can go take one of their classes through Fieldcraft Survival. Moving on to person of influence number 3, we're going to say Johnny Primo. Shout out to Primo. So who is Johnny Primo? Johnny is yet another Army vet who spent his time in the Green Berets like Mike. If you listen to any of the podcasts that he's been on or any of the content that he's put out, it's not a lot of content. He's not really the guy that's putting out a lot of internet content like podcasts or videos and stuff like that. But if you listen, he's established quite the reputation and resume while operating overseas. He currently owns and instructs for his company, Courses of Action, and Courses of Action primarily focuses on shooting, tactical, and mindset training. So what drew me to Primo? In a sentence, he is the real deal. What you see is what you get with Johnny. He is one of the most intense people I've ever met, and considering that the groups of people that I tend to float around in, that's saying something. Though while he's intense, he does a great job of balancing his intense training with humor and genuine concern for the learning of his students. He's able to meet students where they're at, and while 1 second he can be putting a new shooter or a woman that might feel uncomfortable in a group full of men at ease. While one moment he can make this person feel super comfortable and say, hey, don't worry about it, we're gonna fix it, just listen to the steps, and he can disarm them and make them feel comfortable so that way they can focus on the task at hand. But then he can turn right around and tell me to unfuck myself. He can meet people where they're at and give them the appropriate levels of instruction that they need. Unlike everyone else that's kind of on this list, aside from one other people, Johnny is actually somebody that I actually know and that I call a friend. I took my first course with him back in early 2018, and I recently completed my fourth with him, CQB. There's a reason that I keep going back, and that's because the content is top notch. And really, at the end of the day, I really just enjoy being around Johnny. Where can you find Johnny's content? Again, like I mentioned, he's not the podcast guy. He has been on podcasts. Everybody likes to have him on. He's an interesting guy. He's got a crazy backstory, He's one of those pull yourself up by your bootstraps guys. The guy doesn't have any quit in him. He's got a very interesting story that you can find on several different podcasts, and I suggest you listen to him. I believe he's been on the Redcon 1 podcast, on the Fieldcraft Survival podcast, I think at one of their first episodes. At any rate, again, he's not this guy that's putting out, internet videos, instructionals or funny content or podcasts. That's not him. The majority of Johnny's content is going to be had through one-on-one or group interaction. And the best thing I would recommend for you to do if you want to get in contact with him, which I would recommend, is to follow him on Instagram, which is at Courses of Action, which is courses_of_action, and get a hold of him there. And as an instructor who has recently become, well, not recently, but since I have gone to his courses, he's become a role model and a friend, and I really can't recommend to you enough to take your training seriously. And if you're gonna do that, I would highly recommend you get into one of Primo's classes, because he'll definitely teach you those requisite skills, and he's not going to teach you any bullshit. You can trust that what he's teaching you, it works, because obviously he's used it. So, Primo, thanks, man. Anyway, so moving on to person of influence number 4, Matt Best. Who is Matt Best? Matt is, wait for it, another Army vet, and I'm starting to see a pattern here. At any rate, Matt, like John Lovell, spent his time as a Ranger in 75th Ranger Regiment, and upon exiting the military, contracted with the CIA. Matt eventually left contracting and began his career as an entrepreneur, which is what he's best known for. Along with Jared Taylor and a few other veterans, he created the clothing company Article 15 Clothing. Matt grew to prominence through his satirical videos on YouTube. And if you get a second, definitely go check out his video titled Tacticool. You'll be glad you did. Eventually, Matt hooked up with Evan Hafer and helped get Black Rifle Coffee into the public spotlight. Did I mention Matt starred in his own feature-length movie? And that was actually funded by Article 15 through crowdsourcing. So not only did he write a movie along with his buddies, he starred in it and funded it himself. You can buy it on Amazon. It's called Range 15, and it's worth a watch. So definitely go check that out. So today, Matt is one of the main guys behind Black Rifle Coffee, and as well as the associated podcast Free Range American, which I would also highly recommend you check out. I enjoy it. Lots of laughs, lots of good information, and lots of good comments from people who have been in the shit. No fakers there. I really enjoyed it, and I think if you like this kind of content and you've got time to listen to my shit, still listen to my stuff, but go check out Free Range too. So by now, at this point, you're kind of wondering, oh, I forgot to mention, he wrote a book. So on top of his devilish good looks, he's also an author. Is there really anything Matt Best can't do? Well, by now you're probably sitting there saying, like, I'm just sitting here sucking off Matt Best. And maybe you're right, but I am mad about it. Matt, slide into my DMs and let's hang out. What drew me to Matt? I've had a man crush on Matt admittedly, since 2015. When I was doing all my initial tactical training and dipping my toe into that arena, tactical content was a lot more limited than it is now. And Article 15 videos and content stood out not only because the guys involved were all legit guys, they weren't fakers, but because of the comedic and lighthearted nature of the stuff that they were putting out. While at the time, 90% of the tactical YouTube content was this like super cringy dick measuring contest between posers and what Andy Stumpf would consider tactical LARPers, Matt and his Article 15 crew really put out funny, feel good content from the perspective of those real motherfuckers who had actually done some shit. So now, while Matt's comedy is initially what got my attention and what got me hooked on his content, it was actually a serious motivational video that had the biggest impact on me and my personal growth. So let me set the stage for you. Let's go back to September, October 2015. I'll set the scene for you. In the middle of one of the hardest SWAT certification courses in the United States, and I'm spending every day of this, 5-ish week course clenching my asshole because you can autofill for literally any number of reasons. I mean, all of them are good reasons, and there's a reason behind each reason that you could possibly fail, obviously. But point being, one little slip up and you're gone, out looking for new employment. And I shit you not, I was dreaming about tactics. Like at night, I was sleeping, dreaming about tactics that we were doing in the house. That's where my brain was at, just obsessed, always having to be on, strung pretty tight, for that duration. And on top of that, I was actually going through, the first real breakup that I'd ever gone through, like my first real long-term relationship. So that was an awesome place to be too. Bottom line, at this point in my life, I was super stressed out. So anyway, that's where I was at. And now that you're all caught up on my whiny first world problems, let's get back to Matt. So there I am, consuming all of Matt's content, as one does when they have a man crush on someone. I came across this video titled Motivation, I Choose Life. And y'all, let me tell you, that video changed my fucking life. I was obsessed with it for a year. I shit you not, I watched that video every day before I went to the gym. Every day. At least once. Sometimes 5 or 6 times. And when I say obsessed, it's not an overstatement. Like, I'm such a little lame-ass fanboy that since I saw that video back in 2015, all my phone alarms to this day are still labeled hustle. So, yeah, I fangirled out so hard. But here's the thing. I was at a pivotal place in my life, and I was at a whole bunch of different forks in the road in different areas of my life. And that video gave me the mentality tweak to really pursue things that were important to me. Taking my actual favorite quote from that video, it made me focus on being the person I wanted to be despite anybody else's expectations. So if you're listening to this and you know Matt Best or are Matt Best and are listening, hashtag unlikely, let him know that his lame-ass video he filmed 6 years ago in his garage actually changed my life. So anyway, I'm done. I'll take his dick out of my mouth now, and we'll move on to... Well, actually, we got to talk about how to find Matt's content. For starters, definitely check out his old YouTube videos where you got to start. Search mbest11x, one word, so mbest11x. Also, any of the Black Rifle advertisements. If you're looking at a Black Rifle video that's funny, it was probably heavily influenced by Matt. His book, Thank You for My Services, out there, so check that out. It's awesome. I have it. And be sure to check him out on Free Range American Podcast, along with the other excellent personalities over there at Black Rifle. Now, moving on. Person of interest number 5, Tim Kennedy. I think it would be easier to make a list of things that Tim Kennedy is not. However, I'll do my best to convey everything that Tim has got his finger in. For starters, he is yet another Army guy and yet another Green Beret. However, unlike Mike and Primo, Tim is actually still active in the military. On top of being at the tip of the military spear. He is also a UFC vet who is consistently ranked in the top 10 in his weight class in the world for the majority of his time spent as a pro fighter in the UFC. Since departing the UFC, Tim has spread out into a number of different areas. Most notably, he is the founder of the training company Sheepdog Response. Sheepdog Response helps prepare, equip, and train the average citizen to respond to emergency situations through tactical self-defense, preparedness, and medical training. All good stuff, all kind of shit that I'm into. And what drew me to Tim? Initially, I became aware of Tim as a mixed martial artist back when I was still in my college days. And as a jiu-jitsu practitioner and mixed martial artist, he was obviously somebody that me, a BJJ guy and MMA dabbler, would be a fan of. And I quickly kind of Tim's backstory and his background really resonated with me, and he became a guy that I followed through his MMA career. So I do feel, though, that his influence and my interest in his goings-ons, whatever. Anyway, my interest in what he had going on really took off in the past couple of years as he began Sheepdog Response and established a pretty substantial YouTube presence. The first thing you'll notice about Tim is his energy level. You can feel his energy and his charisma through the content that he posts. You just can't help but like that guy. And you can't help but want to be a part of whatever he's doing, whether it be he's cooking in the kitchen and chopping onions with a samurai sword, or doing runs through the shoe house. You just want to hang out with Tim. Whatever he's doing looks like the most fun thing. He's like a Tom Sawyer, right? That guy could get me to whitewash a fence and have a blast doing it. The second thing that drew me to Tim is his expertise and success in the areas that I'm very passionate about. Tim is at the pinnacle of the fields of tactics and shooting, martial arts, and just being a good family man. And to me, if anyone asks me what the ideal male archetype would be, I definitely point to Tim. If someone's like, hey man, I need one role model. As a man, I need one role model. I'm sending John Lovell's up there too, but Tim's a hard one to beat. Oh man. Toss up between John and Tim. So where can you find Tim's content? Tim is really active on YouTube and Instagram these days. Tim Kennedy MMA is his Insta handle, and Tim Space Kennedy is his YouTube. Sheepdog Response also has a very active YouTube channel, so check them out. And if you really want to pursue him further, which I think you should, it looks like fun. If nothing else, you get to hang out with Tim. I definitely recommend taking one of his courses through Sheepdog Response. On to the next one. Person of interest number 6, Ryan Michler. Who is Ryan Michler, you might ask? I think like Primo, he's one of the, as far as this list is concerned, he's one of the more unknown guys. I mean, he's starting to become a household name, depending on what kind of values you espouse and what kind of circles you run around in. But I can proudly say that Ryan represents a guy from the Marine Corps. So he's repping somebody other than the Army. I promise I'm not biased. I like all of you guys. Anyway, but Ryan is best known for his podcast and his subsequent movement, Order of Man, which promotes traditional masculine values and men stepping up to the plate and taking control of their lives. And if you ever hear me say something to the effect of protect, provide, preside, or those words, that's a tip of the hat to Ryan, because that's his whole thing. And what drew me to Ryan? Honestly, I'm not really sure how I stumbled across Ryan and Order of Man. I think it was probably the Order of Man Instagram page that I followed on Instagram. Did I say Instagram already? Whatever. At any rate, I connected with him on Instagram, I believe. I started following him. And one of the podcast topics I think interested me, so I gave it a try. And from there, I was interested. I was interested. He put out a good product, and I liked what he had to say. Luckily for me, I had an excellent role model as a father. A lot of Ryan's content is highly valuable to those men who grew up without a strong male figure in their lives. And like I said, for me, I had a good example set for me growing up. Uh, so I kind of skim over those. But for those of you guys who didn't have a strong male role model growing up or a strong male influence, Ryan's got some really good content for you, about showing up, about filling that gap. So if you got the time, he's got the knowledge. Definitely check him out. Um, but what Ryan does touch on um, is, well, let's do this. Ryan's content really touches on a broad spectrum of topics, and all of them are really aimed at giving the men the tools to be successful professionals, husbands, and fathers. And the ones that I most, I not identify with, but the ones that I enjoy the most or that I find the most value in are the ones that cover fatherhood and being a good husband. I don't have either of those quote unquote problems yet, but I want to be prepared for when that time comes. The thing, though, about Ryan that really most resonated with me was his just start something approach. Ryan has built this whole movement over the past 5 to 6 years, and it now has become his full time job. He's become super successful. He's getting his message out, and it's really, really cool. But how it all started, though, by just putting something out there. It's like we've talked about in my previous podcasts, where if you expect a perfect product on your first attempt, you're never going to get started. However, if you just throw it out there and view it as practice and R&D and as an opportunity to create a better product next time, that's how you're going to succeed. And Ryan is living proof of that. It's been really cool watching his progress and success over the past couple of years. And like Primo, I have actually met Ryan in person. I had the opportunity to train jiu-jitsu and hang out with him at a week-long jiu-jitsu camp in Maine. And I can attest to you that the person Ryan portrays in his content is the person he is in real life. And he's one of those cats out there who is actually practicing what he preaches. He is, his own success story. Because, again, he's talking from a point of knowing where you're at. He's not talking from a point of, like, a high horse or at the top of the mountain. He's been at the bottom of the mountain and he climbed the mountain. He's still climbing the mountain, but he's giving us men the tips and the pathways and the roadmap on how to get where he's going. So where can you find Ryan? For starters, definitely follow his Instagram at Ryan Michler. It's one word. Michler is Michler. He's really active on there, and he's really interactive with his followers in the comment section. From there, check out his podcast, Order of Man, which can be found on really any major podcast hosting platform. He's also got a book called Sovereignty, which I haven't personally read, but I hear it's awesome. And if you really, really want to get involved with him, he's got the Iron Council, which is a member service, right, where you have access to forums and activities and meet and greets and all kinds of stuff. So definitely check him out. So we're winding up. We're going to get to Person of Influence number 7, and I think that's where we're going to stop it today. Number 7 is one of the first internet influencers that I ever had, back when the term internet influencer wasn't a bad word. And person number 7 is Ralph Gracie black belt Kurt Osiander. Who is Kurt Osiander? As I mentioned, Kurt is a jiu-jitsu black belt under Ralph Gracie and was the longtime head instructor of the Ralph Gracie Academy in San Francisco, where he gained quote-unquote jiu-jitsu celebrity through his YouTube channel and his recurring segment Move of the Week. What drew me to Kurt? Like most other people on this list, I was initially drawn to Kurt's personality and his approach to training. Kurt is able to maintain a really good, happy balance of humor and lightheartedness while also being driven, goal-oriented, and intense. Essentially, the good times are going to keep rolling provided everyone out there is putting in the work. If you're slacking, you're going to get smashed. If you're not there to train hard, you're going to get smashed. Don't like it? Then get the fuck off my mats. But if you're there to learn and you're there to work hard, it's going to be a humorous and fun experience. That's how I like to train, and that's how I personally like to teach. The other thing that drew me to Kurt is that he gained his notoriety not as a high-level competitor or world champ, but as an instructor and personality. He was really my first example, or at least the first example I took notice of, that influence isn't reserved for those at the highest echelons of any given field or vocation. Kurt is proof that you can have a good, authentic message and a way to deliver that message that resonates, or that if you have this, right? If you have a way to deliver that message that resonates with people, then you can get your word out there. And really, at the end of the day, Kurt has always been the model for the black belt instructor that I want to be. And what's more, he serves as an example that while I may never make a name as a known, or I may never make a name or be well known for anything that I practice. I may never be known as some good jiu-jitsu practitioner or some high-level tactical operator or some competitive shooter or whatever. I may never be known for that. But that doesn't mean that my message can't get out there to help and motivate other people. Where can you find Kurt's content? For starters, I would definitely check out his older videos on YouTube. His Move of the Week content is on point. That's how I got introduced to him, and that's what kept me staying. They're funny. They're legit instructionals, and they're free. Who doesn't like free content? Anyway, yeah, to this day, I still love watching those videos. So, you can also catch him in the documentary Jiu-Jitsu versus the World, which is for free on YouTube. From there, there's a couple longer videos that kind of follow Kurt around in a day in the life kind of format, which are entertaining to say the least. One is done by Stuart Cooper Films. The other one is done by Budo Jake and Budo Videos. It's called the series called Rolled Up. Both of those are repeat watches on my YouTube. With that, let's go ahead and wrap that up. I think, honestly, I could make a part 2 and a part 3 in addition to this list. So I'll probably do those in the future. This is not at all an exhaustive list of people who have been key influences to me, my personal growth, where I want to go in life. But that's a good springboard for you guys. There's a list, and honestly, all these guys are, whether they realize it or not, they're all really interconnected, with how social media works. You might follow Johnny and then have Mike pop up in your suggested, or you might follow Mike and have some other guy, Kawa or, Buck Owens, somebody, you know what I mean? These guys, once you start following them and paying attention to them, you're going to find that's how you get in. These are the keys to these castles, right? And if you start following them, other recommended content will come up and you can start creating your own list of people. But hopefully this is going to be a good springboard for those of you who don't really know where to start. So before we sign off real quick, I just want to make a note on the importance of having your own list of motivational people or role models, or those people that you look up to, who live the principles you ascribe to, and embody those characteristics that you value or would like to develop in your life. Having a group of people you can look to as an example, or have already blazed a similar path to the one that you're on, is crucial for your success. Use them as motivation when you're riding that struggle bus, because they're proof that it can be done. And even better, learn from their mistakes and avoid the places that they've stumbled. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Emulate. And if you haven't noticed already, I'm just out here faking it till I make it anyway. So be like me, fake it till you make it. Let's go ahead and leave it there. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you taking your time out to hear me run my suck. And with that, go do something hard today. Watch out for the crazies, and we'll catch you in the next one.
You're listening to the FM Podcast.